What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court for today, Sunday, July 24th. We are in the prime time of the NBA schedule. I'm your host, Sean Murphy, alongside the Robin to my Batman, my boy, Jeff Iafrady. Jeff, am I Robin or are you Robin? I have no idea. We're pretty much, we're both
Yeah,
Batman.
it just
If you
sounds
really,
better.
yeah, exactly. 100%. It's good to see you, my friend. And it's the dead time of the NBA year, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean there isn't things to still talk about because it is that time where win totals and predictions are being put out into the world for the first time. And the survey says the Pistons will still suck and that they will get 27 and a half wins, according to Vegas. Now, Vegas did kind of put us around a similar trajectory last year, and we actually did not hit our win total last season. However, a lot of injuries, COVID, very different circumstances. But Jeff, what was your gut reaction when you saw the first projection for the Pistons at 27 and a half wins?
Well, Vegas, I'll start with this. Vegas always knows because
Yep.
it's not just the basketball too. It's with the Tigers. I know the Tigers, the over under was like around 70,
They
and
knew at the
people,
draft.
yeah, they really
People
did.
forget, like everyone was talking like it's gonna be Jabari. It's gonna be Jabari. He's the number one pick. Jabari's the number one pick. Literally like 24 hours beforehand, odds suddenly just go to Paulo somehow. All of a
No,
sudden.
exactly. And I think even across baseball, the NFL, and even with the NBA now, like last year, I think the Pistons, the over under was what, like kind of around the same number, and they only won
Yeah.
23 games. So they were
Yeah.
right. But this one, I'm going to have to disagree with Sean. I think if I'm a better, I'm going over simply because, listen, I don't think this team is only 4 games better. I get the youth, and that's probably a big part of why it's at 27 and a half. I mean, it's a team full of 20 and 21-year-olds. So I get, it's hard to win in the NBA. It's a grown man's league. So I get that. But from my perspective, last year you won 23 games with Cade Cunningham struggling in the beginning parts of that season. You had a lot of injuries throughout the season. This year, not only will you have a second-year Cade Cunningham, but you're going to have a third-year Sadiq Bey, a third-year Killian Hayes, third-year Isaiah Stewart, and you have Jaden Ivey. I get it's his rookie year. I'm not going to put too much, faith into him coming out and just having an amazing rookie year. Who knows?
Yeah.
But with the rest of the guys, just that alone, like this team has to be better. I would say the floor, we talked about this, it has to be 30 wins. I think they can get 30, whether it's 30, 31, 32, but still that's more than 27 and a half. So I would still bet the over. I think if next year they finish the year with 27, 26 wins, I would love to meet the Pistons fan that's willing to take that.
Yeah.
I really am. I just don't think it's going to happen. I know the East is tough, but even the Washington Wizards last year, they won 35 wins. I think the Pistons could get at least 30, but that's just me.
Yeah. I listened to the Hoop Collective podcast recently, which by the
It's a great
way,
podcast.
it's a great podcast. The reason why I love it is because it is the nerdiest NBA podcast on the planet, and that's why I love it so much. Those guys are freaking dorks and argue
Yeah.
over like the smallest like semantics in the NBA world, and it's my favorite thing.
They were hyping up the Pistons, though.
Dude, exactly. Yeah, and they were talking about the Pistons, but one thing they touched on specifically was if you want to lose games in the NBA, start young guards. And that is accurate. It is very true. So that's one thing when you're looking at the youth of this backcourt with Cade and Jaden Ivey. There's going to be a lot of turnovers, especially early on.
Right.
And I think that's valid. So I think for at least the first 10, 12 games, I think especially we could be seeing some turnover issues. But I think one thing that this projection doesn't take into account, and this is where kind of the Vegas and the analytics game kind of becomes a little bit harder to play, is when you throw in the human element, because Cade Cunningham isn't an ordinary number one overall pick. There's a reason why, Bill Simmons and people have him in the top 12 of their trade value lists, because Cade Cunningham is perceived as a consensus franchise guy, even if they have guys like Evan Mobley above him just because of his freak athleticism and his defensive ability that he's already shown. There's a reason he has him that high, and it's because he has the intangibles to be a franchise guy. And with that, I think with what you've seen with how he's already bulked up significantly going into his second year, like significantly. And in addition, his leadership ability but also the improvement that you saw rapidly over one season. Imagine what the improvement's going to be like after having an entire summer. So I think there's a legitimate case that we could be talking about Cade Cunningham as an all-star, like how we did with LaMelo Ball. But I think the difference is that this could be an all-star that could actually win you some games. So I think that's why you have to take that into account. And with that, we talk about the turnover thing with him and Ivy, but at the same time, if Cade puts him in positions to succeed, that could potentially limit turnovers too. So I just think, I think people are looking at it and going, oh, well, they're young guards. It's a young team. So yeah, they're going to suck. But I think, with year 3 for Sadiq and for Isaiah Stewart, guys who are really intelligent basketball players, like, I don't think this is necessarily written off as just like a team that's going to be scrubs. I really don't.
Yeah, and Cade this year, especially adding another ball handler like Jaden Ivey, that's going to help the turnovers. Last year, it was Cade or pretty much bust. You had Kojo in the backcourt as well and Killian Hayes, but this year it's going to alleviate some of that pressure off of them because you have another ball handler, so that's going to help. But another part of it they don't take into consideration is post All-Star break, Cade was among the lead leaders in clutch points. So now you got a second-year Cade Cunningham in that area. So I think he's going to be even better down the stretch. I know, 20, we talked about it. Brian Windhorst talked about it as well. If you want to lose games, you start young guards. But I think with Cade, there's something about the last 2 minutes of a game. If they could just stay in a lot of these games, honestly, I think there's going to be an improvement from last year. Even adding 2 rookies like Jalen Duren and Jaden Ivey, you have Alec Burks, you have a couple more veterans that can hopefully help them close out a couple of those games. Because post All-Star break, they were 500 with that roster. So again, I think there's a lot to look forward to this year, and definitely they got to get over 27.5. But who knows, man? Vegas, damn, and they're never wrong for some reason.
Yeah.
Even though it sounds good, it sounds really good.
Well, and a lot of the things though with it is that it is a lot of it based off of what we saw the year before, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And so I think it's just a little bit difficult to project what these rookies can come in and do because one like factors we're not even throwing in is what if we do see an effect from a guy like Jalen Duren this upcoming season, because there are those types of X factors. What if a guy like Killian Hayes is able to take the next step? I think
Livers.
those are the types of things that Vegas isn't factoring in, is those guys that can take that leap. And so I think that's where you see a lot of times where Vegas isn't entirely accurate, is they can't really project those types of jumps. I think one thing, another thing to consider is looking at who's going to be at the bottom of the Eastern Conference, because I would argue right now, just from where they're at, I would say the Pistons are not a bottom 3 team in the Eastern Conference. I would put them above the Indiana Pacers as they're currently constructed. I would put them above the Charlotte Hornets as they're currently constructed. I'd put them over the Washington Wizards as they're currently constructed. You could make a legitimate argument that they could be better than the Knicks. So, they're like, just as far as the Eastern Conference goes right now, even though we talk about how deep it is, and it is deep. I mean, did I even mention the Orlando Magic that I put them in there? I'm not sure if I did.
No, you didn't.
Okay, yeah, right there. I definitely put them above the Orlando Magic, despite having Paulo. So that just tells you right there, there's at least 4 or 5 teams that you can make a legitimate argument right now the Pistons are better than.
Yeah, and I think another thing you have to watch out for, and it's what happened last year too, to help them still. I think they got the under last year. It's the injuries, and that's something you can't predict. You obviously don't want it to happen, but it's bound to happen. Guys are going to get banged up. Yep. So if guys are healthy, and you don't know what's going to happen around the East too with injuries, like you talked about, you brought up a couple teams, they could have injuries, a plethora of injuries that could help the Pistons as well. So it's hard to predict. That's why it's such an interesting discussion. That's why we were so excited to have a video and talk about it, because if you say under and you think they'll have 27 wins, whatever it is, yes, it's an improvement, and I guess you can make an argument for it. But I think the majority, the consensus around all Pistons fans is like, listen, we got to get at least 30, 35 wins. There's people saying we can make the playoffs, or you'd still be in the play-in even as a 7th or 8th seed, but still have a chance to make the playoffs. I think they have to strive for the play, and I think as long as they stay healthy, I trust Dwayne. The guy is a resume. I get he's won 20 games last 3 seasons, but he has more mature, more talented guys. So I think everything's pointing in the direction, Sean. They got to hit the over. So who knows? I might throw a couple dollars on it.
Now, you and I are aligned on this path and on this vision. And I have a question that I haven't even asked you yet. And I haven't even asked you this off air. This is something that I don't think we have even talked about, but they brought it up on the Hoop Collective. I'm going to bring it up here. And I think it's a conversation we at least need to start having in the back of our heads. There's a kid named Wembanyama is going to be coming out of France. Okay. And I'm not saying that I think the Pistons should be going for the number 1 pick next year. That is not, it's not what I'm saying. However, my question is there a point at the season where you're just seeing that things aren't going well, or that maybe that win total, you're not going to make it to the play-in? Is there a point in the season where you perhaps try to go for that top 5 in the lottery, to go for that type of talent in the lottery? Because like, is the roadmap, because a lot of people believe, and with this Vegas total, a lot of people would believe that the Pistons direction is to get that one more shot at the lottery that next year, hope that you could perhaps get another top 5 pick to add alongside Cade and Ivy and Bay and Stewart. That's the argument that they would make, but I'm not sure if that's the direction that Troy Weaver's going in. I wonder if what we have right now is going to even allow us to be in that conversation.
Yeah, see, for me too, they need to strive to win games. I do not care where they are midseason. That is just bad for culture. That's just a bad taste. Like to go out and be like, all right, guys, let's just play. If you lose, it's okay. Like I want them to play night in and night out competitive basketball, because it's good for the culture. It's good for these young guys. I don't care about, the getting the number 1 pick next year, especially because of the lottery. Like, you don't know where you're going to land. Like you can take the Houston Rockets, for example. They were god awful and they still landed 3. So it's, again, you can't predict these things. But what I will say is, for the people at home that, the fans that are like, you know what, at this point, just lose, continue to lose. You don't understand from a player's perspective. These guys aren't going to do that. Like Cade, Jaden, convince those guys to go out and lose. It's just not going to happen. So for me, Sean,
have you seen that kid from France?
Dude, listen, I get it, but you could still have the 4th, 5th, 6th worst record and still have a chance to get that number 1 pick. So for me, I wouldn't want to sit here, have a terrible season. You win 24, 25 games and you don't even land the number 1 pick. All of that, burn it and throw it in the trash. I would much rather them go out and play competitive basketball, try and squeeze some wins. They're still going to have a lottery pick, Sean, even if they try or not. They're not very talented. So for me, just go be competitive, and I think the rest will just work itself out. I'm not too worried about it.
And even then, if they do like someone up in the top 5, who's to say that they can't, in theory, trade up? I mean, that's the thing. Sometimes, I mean, we saw Troy Weaver do it in the draft this year as well. Sometimes you go and make your own luck. But Jeff, have you seen that kid from France?
I'm not gonna lie to you. I've been watching some highlights in the last couple days. So I'm not saying it's a bad, decision to take the guy. I'm just saying to base your season around trying to get the guy is what I don't agree with.
Dude, I was watching some of his highlights for the first time the other day. I was trying my best to hold off. I was like, I don't even want to think about it. Like, I'm just focused on what we have in the here and now. Right. And then I watched this kid play and I'm like, oh my Lord. It's like Evan Mobley, Chet Holmgren, Giannis, and Keegan Murray had a baby. And it's this kid. And it's just insane, man. It's going to be unreal. But with that, what do you think the Pistons should do this upcoming season? Let us know in the comment section down below. And also, are you going to be betting the over on that win total? Are you going to be smashing that over like our friends at Woodward Bets might be telling you to? But also, be sure that you're following my guy Jeff on Twitter at JeffIFrady, myself at Sean Halfcourt. But also, be sure that you're subscribing to From Half Court to get more of this content throughout the week, baby. So with that, we want to thank you all so much for tuning in and making Woodward Sports your home for Detroit and sports coverage in general. And with that, we will catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure to subscribe.